Today, I want to talk about some new research that unfortunately confirms something that's been widely suspected for a long time. Researchers from the University of Exeter conducted the study, and it was published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The study examined extinction risk by recreating contained ecosystems with planned levels of complexity. Some ecosystems were very complex, with many species and diverse ecological roles, while other ecosystems were simple, with only a few species and very basic food webs. The researchers built these ecosystems with insects and plants, and they applied their experiments by harvesting specific species into a local extinction, so as to see the ramifications of that extinction on their ecosystem, on their food chain. In a nutshell, the researchers found that the more complex ecosystems could better handle the extinction of a species, because in these more complex ecosystems there was usually another species that could step in to fill the empty niche left behind by the extinct species. They could fill the ecological role, so to speak. However, in smaller ecosystems, the researchers found that there might not usually be a species that was available to do this, and if there was no species that could fill the empty niche, this would destabilize the ecosystem. The consequences are that any organisms downstream in the ecology, that is, any organisms that use the byproducts or the waste or the altered environment created by an upstream actor, if they use any of these byproducts as a resource, because that upstream actor is now extinct, the downstream species, the downstream organisms, will now be deprived of that resource. The species who made it has gone extinct, and because they don't produce this resource anymore for this downstream organism, this disrupts their lifestyles, and it endangers them, and it may lead to their own extinction. Now, if you're following the picture here, you can see where this ends up. This can potentially lead to an extinction cascade, where the extinction of one or a few key species with no replacements leads to the extinction of more and more species as the ecosystem continually and increasingly destabilizes. A common example that's used to illustrate this concept involves wolves, deer, and plants. Assume that there's a region where wolves go extinct. Their prey, the deer, can now reproduce and wander around without fear of predators because the wolves are extinct. And so the deer numbers swell, their populations grow to massive sizes. Now this is bad because this swollen deer population will then migrate through an area and eat up all of the vegetation. The plant biomass in the ecology isn't dense enough. There's not enough of it to sustain this kind of massive herbivore population. And so this big herd of deer just strips the landscape clean. And this has more downstream consequences. Now that the foliage is almost entirely destroyed, smaller herbivores like rabbits and insects will struggle because their food source is gone, and now they're at risk of their own extinction. And it's not just species downstream in the ecology either. Organisms at the same trophic level as the extinct species also show an increased extinction risk, which means that these cascades could begin with most or all of an entire trophic level in an ecosystem going extinct. In the abstract of their study, the researchers explain, quote, "This effect was markedly stronger in simple communities than for the same species within a more complex food web. We show that this is due to functional redundancy in the more complex food webs and confirm this mechanism with a food web simulation model by highlighting the importance of the presence and the strength of trophic links, providing redundancy to those links that were lost." Unquote. The researchers point out the significance of their study, saying, quote, "The loss of biodiversity through human impact can change the structure of ecological communities, which, models predict, can affect the likelihood of secondary extinctions." Unquote. They're basically pointing out that human impact, like deforestation and pollution, leads to extinctions, and that these extinctions can lead to the simplification of ecosystems through decreases in biodiversity. The authors say, and I quote, "There is concern that the simplification of ecosystems due to the loss of species and ecological interactions increases their vulnerability to such secondary extinctions." Unquote.